The first rays of dawn stretched across the vast, ancient canvas of the Taos desert, painting the rugged mesas and deep canyons in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender. A profound silence reigned, broken only by the whispers of the wind sifting through sparse sagebrush and the distant cry of a hawk circling high above. It was a silence that spoke of timelessness, of nature's raw, untamed majesty, a place where the earth itself seemed to breathe. But this sacred quiet was about to be shattered, irrevocably, by an intrusion from a world far removed from its primal beauty. A low, guttural roar, followed by the sickening crunch of tearing metal, echoed across the vast expanse, swiftly followed by a plume of dark, oily smoke that billowed upwards, a stark, angry stain against the pristine morning sky. This wasn't just another day in the desert. It was the genesis of an extraordinary tale, a story of unexpected connections woven in the crucible of disaster, and a secret so profound it would defy every expectation. Please consider subscribing if you enjoy stories of unlikely heroes and hidden truths. Miles away, a figure moved with the unhurried grace of one intimately familiar with the land. Ray, a man whose weathered face told tales of countless sunrises and harsh winters, guided his sturdy mare, Luna, through a narrow, rocky arroyo. His worn Stetson sat low on his brow, shading eyes that missed nothing. Ray was, by most definitions, a homeless cowboy, a wanderer by necessity, living a life stripped bare of modern comforts. Yet, in his quiet dignity, in the easy rhythm of his stride beside Luna, there was a profound wealth. His mare wasn't just an animal. She was his companion, his transport, his family. Their bond was a silent language of mutual trust and understanding, forged over years of shared solitude and survival. They lived off the land, finding sustenance in its sparse offerings, their daily routine a testament to resilience. Each sunrise brought the promise of another day, another journey across the unforgiving but beautiful landscape that was both his prison and his sanctuary. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes, rooted in a deep respect for life and the harsh realities it presented. The rising column of smoke, however, was an anomaly that demanded attention. Luna, sensing the shift in Ray's demeanor, flicked an ear, her powerful body tensing slightly. "Easy, girl," Ray murmured, his voice a low rumble. "Something's not right." He nudged her forward, his instincts honed by decades of wilderness living. The scent of jet fuel and burning plastic grew stronger as they drew closer, a grim confirmation of his fears. Rounding a final ridge, the scene that unfolded before them was one of utter devastation. The shattered remains of a sleek private jet lay scattered across the desert floor, a grotesque mosaic of mangled steel and shattered dreams. The luxury craft, designed for effortless flight above the world, was now a twisted monument to gravity's unforgiving embrace. Amidst the chaos, a flash of movement caught Ray's eye. A figure, barely visible, lay precariously close to the main fuselage, miraculously alive. It was Evelyn Hart, a name synonymous with global finance and power, now reduced to a fragile, broken form. Her designer clothes were torn and smudged with blood and dust, a stark, almost ironic contrast to the opulent wreckage surrounding her. The air crackled with the heat of the smoldering debris and the chilling silence that follows a catastrophe. Without hesitation, Ray dismounted, his gaze sweeping the scene for immediate dangers. "Hold on," he called out, his voice rough but steady, a lifeline cutting through the shock. He moved with a practiced urgency, his years of handling livestock and navigating treacherous terrain proving invaluable. Reaching her, he could see the severity of her injuries, a deep gash on her forehead, a clearly broken leg, and the shallow, ragged breaths that indicated internal trauma. The situation was dire, remote, and incredibly dangerous. Rescuing her from the twisted metal was just the first, desperate act in a drama that would soon entangle their vastly different worlds in ways neither could ever have foreseen. The jarring descent into unconsciousness offered Evelyn Hart a brief, merciful reprieve from the searing agony, but it was fleeting. Ray, with a strength born of necessity and a lifetime of hard living, carefully maneuvered her battered form onto Luna's broad back. The mare, sensing the fragile burden, moved with an unusual gentleness across the rugged, unforgiving terrain, the setting sun painting long, distorted shadows that danced like specters around them. Every jostle sent fresh waves of pain through Evelyn, threatening to drag her back into the abyss, yet a stubborn will, honed by decades of corporate battles, clung fiercely to the edges of her awareness. She was a woman accustomed to private jets and five-star medical care, now utterly at the mercy of a silent cowboy and his horse, traversing a landscape as alien as a distant planet. The makeshift camp was little more than a lean-to fashioned from sun-bleached canvas and weathered branches, offering scant protection against the desert's nocturnal chill. Ray's movements were efficient, practiced, a testament to his solitary existence. He laid Evelyn gently on a bed of dried grasses and an old wool blanket, her designer suit torn and stained with blood, a stark contrast to the rustic simplicity surrounding her. The chasm between their worlds had never been more apparent than in this moment. Evelyn's accustomed luxury replaced by a raw, primitive fight for survival. Despite the debilitating pain, a flicker of her ingrained need for control ignited. Her eyes, though glazed with suffering, darted around, searching, assessing, a desperate attempt to grasp at some shred of agency, some secret she instinctively knew must be protected. The immediate antagonist wasn't a person, but the overwhelming, insidious circumstances themselves. Evelyn's critical condition hung heavy in the air, a constant ticking clock against the backdrop of the remote and unforgiving Taos environment. The vast, silent desert, which had been Ray's sanctuary, now became a perilous trap, amplifying the growing threat of discovery. Someone, somewhere, would undoubtedly be searching for Evelyn Hart, the billionaire magnate, or at least the wreckage of her private jet. Already, whispers were beginning to circulate through the distant Taos community. A flash of light, a plume of smoke on the horizon, unusual sounds carried on the wind. These were enough to ignite a firestorm of rumors and suspicion among the tight-knit locals. The unlikely tale of a homeless cowboy and a downed plane would quickly spread, creating a social obstacle to Evelyn's desperate desire for anonymity, even as she lay clinging to life. Driven by a deep, unspoken moral compass that transcended the harshness of his own life, Ray tirelessly began the arduous task of caring for his unexpected patient. He cleaned her wounds with water from a hidden spring, applied poultices of desert herbs known only to him, and fashioned splints from scavenged wood and strips of fabric. His hands, though calloused, moved with a surprising gentleness, a quiet determination to preserve the fragile life entrusted to him. Meanwhile, Evelyn, despite the agony that threatened to consume her, fought against the encroaching darkness. With every surge of consciousness, her mind raced, attempting to discreetly assess her situation, to make sense of the chaos, to hide crucial information or send a signal to her network. Her efforts, however, were severely hampered by her injuries, the lack of any communication device, and Ray's constant watchful presence. Their initial interactions were fraught with an unspoken tension, a deep-seated mistrust born from the clash of their vastly different worlds. She saw a rough stranger. He saw a vulnerable yet fiercely guarded woman whose secrets were as palpable as the desert wind. The desert sun, relentless and unforgiving, slowly began to mend Evelyn's fractured body, yet her spirit remained as sharp and unyielding as the jagged peaks surrounding them. Her imperious nature, a finely honed weapon from boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations, now turned on Ray. She would bark orders, demand comforts that simply didn't exist in his world, and attempt to dismiss him with a flick of her wrist, as if he were merely an inconvenient employee. "You've done your part, Cowboy," she'd declare, her voice still raspy but regaining its formidable edge. "I'll handle it from here." But her body, still weak and riddled with pain, betrayed her bravado. Each attempt to rise, each wince of agony, was a stark reminder of her utter dependence on this grizzled, quiet man. The vulnerability she so desperately tried to hide shimmered beneath her hardened exterior, a raw nerve exposed by the harsh reality of her situation. Ray, in turn, remained a pillar of quiet resolve. He wouldn't argue, wouldn't raise his voice, but his steady gaze and unwavering commitment to her recovery spoke volumes. He saw through the layers of wealth and power, past the demanding facade, and began to perceive a profound, almost desperate fear in her eyes. It was a fear not just of death or discomfort, but of something deeper, something that gnawed at her even more than her physical injuries. As her strength slowly returned, so too did Evelyn's frantic energy. She became obsessed with retrieving her satellite phone from the wreckage, sending Ray on increasingly urgent missions to the crash site. When a faint signal finally flickered to life on the battered device, her hushed phone calls, often conducted in the dead of night, became a source of growing intrigue for Ray. He couldn't make out the words, only the frantic whispers, the clipped, urgent tones, and the way her body would tense, her eyes darting around as if expecting to be overheard. She spoke in veiled terms, mentioning assets, documents, and the package, never fully explaining their significance. Her erratic behavior, the furtive glances, and the desperate attempts to access encrypted messages hinted at a secret far more complex than a mere business trip gone awry. Ray, despite his inherent disinterest in the cutthroat world of billionaires, couldn't ignore the signs. This wasn't just about a plane crash. It was about a deeper, more personal struggle, a labyrinth of intrigue that Evelyn was desperately trying to navigate alone. He saw the way she clutched a small, nondescript flash drive she'd miraculously salvaged, her knuckles white as if her life depended on its contents. Meanwhile, beyond the secluded haven of Ray's camp, the ripples of the plane crash were spreading. The local community, initially gripped by shock, was now consumed by a gnawing curiosity. Whispers of unusual sightings in the desert, strange lights, faint sounds of an explosion, had transformed into rumors of a downed plane and an improbable survivor. Ranchers mentioned seeing smoke, hikers reported debris, and the chatter in Taos coffee shops grew louder, tinged with suspicion. Who was on that plane? Why hasn't anyone claimed the wreckage? And who found them? These questions hung heavy in the air, creating a palpable external pressure. More unsettlingly, subtle signs began to emerge that suggested a more sinister search was underway. Ray, with his years of living off the grid, noticed things others wouldn't. Unfamiliar tire tracks on remote trails, the distinct drone of an unseen aircraft circling high above, always just out of sight, and the odd, almost too clean appearance of certain areas near the crash site that had clearly been scoured. It wasn't just official rescue teams or curious locals. Someone else was looking for Evelyn, and they weren't interested in her well-being. This growing threat, a shadow stretching across the vast open desert, forced Evelyn to a grudging acceptance of Ray's protection. Her independence, once her greatest strength, was now a liability. She needed him, his knowledge of the land, his silent strength, his ability to blend into the wilderness. Ray, for his part, found himself grappling with a complex ethical dilemma. He was harboring a mysterious billionaire, a woman whose secrets were clearly attracting dangerous attention. His quiet life, once predictable in its hardship, was now irrevocably intertwined with hers, a dangerous dance between two vastly different worlds, with the Taos desert as their silent, watchful witness. The tension was a living thing, a coiled serpent in their makeshift camp, waiting to strike. The coiled serpent of tension in their makeshift camp finally struck, not with a sudden attack, but with a chilling mechanical hum that descended from the vast blue sky. It was the distinct, unmistakable buzz of a drone, larger and more sophisticated than any recreational model, circling ominously above the crash site, then slowly expanding its search pattern towards their hidden oasis. Ray, his senses honed by years of wilderness living, felt its presence before he saw it, a prickle of alarm on his skin. He grabbed Evelyn, pulling her instinctively into the dense cover of a juniper thicket, Luna pressing close, her ears swiveling. Evelyn, still recovering, gasped, her eyes wide with a terror that transcended her usual composure. The drone lingered, its unseen camera undoubtedly scanning every shadow, every crevice of the landscape. "They're not looking for survivors," Evelyn whispered, her voice tight with suppressed panic. "They're looking for me, and for what I carry." The drone's persistent hum was a stark, technological intrusion into their primal sanctuary, a terrifying reminder of the world Evelyn had fled. She knew this was the moment. Her carefully constructed facade of control crumbled, replaced by a raw, desperate need for understanding. "My flight wasn't just clandestine, Ray. It was an escape. I have sensitive information, evidence, that could expose a powerful, ruthless network. This isn't about business. It's about survival. They want that flash drive." She gestured to the small device she always kept clutched, now more fiercely than ever. "If they find it, or me, I'm dead. And if you're with me, you'll be too." Ray's gaze, usually unreadable, hardened with a grim resolve. He studied Evelyn, truly saw her for the first time without the veil of her immense wealth. He saw not a demanding billionaire, but a woman hunted, her immense power rendered useless in the face of a hidden enemy. His innate sense of justice, dormant under layers of quiet resignation, stirred. He had lived a life of quiet dignity, far removed from corporate intrigue. Yet here he was, inexplicably intertwined with a high-stakes conspiracy. His loyalty, once a simple commitment to a life of solitude with Luna, was now stretched across a chasm of social disparity, tested by a danger he could barely comprehend. But a bond, forged in the crucible of Evelyn's near death and his tireless care, had begun to transcend their vastly different worlds. He had seen her pain, her vulnerability, her fear. He had nursed her back from the brink. He couldn't abandon her now, not when she was truly helpless. His empathy, a quiet strength, compelled him to protect her. "They won't find you here," Ray stated, his voice low but firm, a promise delivered with the weight of the desert's ancient silence. "Not while I'm around." His words were not born of ambition or desire for reward, but from a profound, almost spiritual commitment to rightness. Evelyn, catching her breath, looked at him with a mixture of awe and desperation. She had never encountered such unyielding integrity. It was a currency she didn't understand, a power she couldn't buy. "Ray," she began, her voice gaining a desperate edge, I can make this worth your while, more than you could ever imagine. A life-altering sum, protection for you and Luna, a home, security beyond anything you've ever known. Just get me out of this, keep me safe, and ensure this information reaches the right hands. You help me, and your days of hardship are over. You'll never have to worry about another meal, another cold night, ever again." She laid out the offer, a dazzling vision of comfort and freedom, believing it to be the ultimate persuasion. Ray listened, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, where the drone had finally vanished. He considered her words, not for their material promise, but for what they revealed about her world, a place where every problem had a price tag. He turned to her, his expression unyielding. "I didn't pull you from that wreckage for money, Evelyn, and I won't protect you for it either." His refusal was a quiet thunderclap, shattering her assumptions, forcing her to confront the absolute limits of her power. Her wealth, her influence, her ability to command meant nothing to this man. He was a force of nature, guided by an internal compass she had long forgotten existed. His unwavering principles made her question her own values, her own definition of worth. He wasn't for sale, and in that moment, he was the richest man she had ever known. The serpent didn't just strike. It coiled tighter, its venom seeping into every moment of their precarious existence. The subtle signs Ray had noticed rapidly escalated into undeniable threats. The distant drone grew louder, more frequent, no longer just a high-altitude whisper, but a persistent hum that seemed to follow them. One morning, as dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of orange and violet, Ray spotted a black SUV, its windows tinted, slowly cruising a rarely used dirt track bordering the arroyo where they'd been sheltering. Its presence was a stark anomaly in the desolate landscape, a predator scenting its prey. They had to move, and quickly. Evelyn, still recovering but fueled by a surge of adrenaline, understood the urgency. Her fear, once a carefully guarded secret, now openly etched itself on her face, a raw, human emotion that transcended her billionaire facade. Ray and Luna became their only hope, their guides through a labyrinth of canyons, mesas, and hidden springs. Ray, with his intimate knowledge of every rock and crevice, every dry wash and sheltered alcove, led them deeper into the Taos wilderness, a terrain that was both their sanctuary and their prison. They moved mostly under the cover of darkness, Luna's hooves muffled by soft sand, Evelyn clinging to the mare's back, her body aching, her mind racing. The stakes were no longer about her reputation or a business deal gone awry. They were about survival. The pursuers were relentless, their methods sophisticated. They saw the glint of binoculars on distant ridges, heard the faint crackle of walkie-talkies carried on the wind, and once narrowly evaded a low-flying helicopter that swept over their previous hiding spot, its searchlight cutting through the pre-dawn gloom like a hungry eye. Evelyn realized then, with a chilling certainty, that these people weren't just trying to recover her assets, they were trying to silence her permanently. Cornered in a narrow box canyon, a natural fortress with only one difficult exit, their options dwindled. The sun beat down mercilessly, highlighting their exposed position. Ray, his face grim, scanned the rim of the canyon. "They're closing in," he stated, his voice low, devoid of panic but heavy with the gravity of their situation. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes wide, glistening with a mixture of terror and a desperate resolve. She knew this was it. The time for half-truths and veiled threats was over. If they were to have any chance, Ray needed to know everything. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she began to speak, her voice raspy, but gaining strength with each word, unburdening herself of the secret that had weighed her down for months, years even. "It's not about the company's financials, Ray," she confessed, her gaze locking onto his, pleading for understanding. "It's about a project, a clean energy initiative spearheaded by a rival conglomerate, Helios Corp. On the surface, it promised limitless, sustainable power, but I uncovered evidence that it was a front, a massive, elaborate front for something far more sinister. They were developing a weapon, a highly advanced electromagnetic pulse device disguised as a power grid component. It could cripple entire nations, not just their infrastructure, but their military capabilities, their communication networks, all under the guise of progress. She paused, her chest heaving, the weight of her revelation almost palpable in the still desert air. My own board, some of my closest confidants were in on it. They were promised unimaginable wealth, power beyond measure, if they helped facilitate its development and deployment. My flight wasn't just to escape exposure. It was to deliver the proof, the schematics, the financial records, the intercepted communications, everything I'd meticulously gathered to an international investigative body. The flash drive. It contains the full story, the names, the dates, the coordinates. It's all there. Ray listened, his expression shifting from stoicism to a slow dawning of horror. This wasn't the petty greed of corporate espionage. This was a global conspiracy, a betrayal on an unprecedented scale, with the potential to destabilize the world. Evelyn, the cold, calculating billionaire, transformed before his eyes into a courageous, terrified whistleblower, a lone figure standing against an empire of corruption and destruction. Her secret wasn't just hers, it was a burden for humanity. Her personal sacrifice, risking everything to expose this monstrous lie, resonated deeply within him. He saw the genuine terror in her eyes, but also an unwavering commitment to justice, a flicker of idealism he hadn't expected from someone of her stature. The vastness of the desert suddenly felt small compared to the magnitude of the threat she faced, and the one she was trying to avert for the world. The choice, once a complex, ethical dilemma, now felt stark and clear. He could abandon her, let her face the ruthless machinations of Helios Corp alone, and return to his solitary, safe existence, pretending he'd never heard her words. Or he could commit, fully and irrevocably, to helping her. knowing he would be putting his own life and Luna's at risk against forces far more powerful and ruthless than any he had ever encountered. This wasn't just about saving a life anymore. It was about saving countless lives, about protecting the very fabric of peace and stability. He thought of Luna, his loyal companion, and the quiet dignity of their life, and the inherent injustice of a world where such evil could fester. Was he willing to risk it all for a woman who was once a stranger, for a cause that was global in its implications? His sense of right and wrong, honed by a lifetime of hard choices and simple truths, screamed at him. He looked at Evelyn, her vulnerability laid bare, yet her resolve burning bright and a quiet strength solidified within him. His life, his home, his very identity were now inextricably linked to this fight. The Taos wilderness, with its ancient wisdom, had given him a purpose he never knew he needed, a reason to fight beyond mere survival. The desert wind, once a silent confidant, now carried the heavy weight of their desperate gamble. Ray and Evelyn, no longer two disparate souls but a unified force, meticulously crafted their strategy. Ray's intimate knowledge of the Taos landscape, every hidden arroyo, every ancient trail, became their tactical map, while Evelyn's sharp intellect devised the intricate details of their exposure plan. The flash drive, now their weapon, held the damning evidence she had risked everything to protect. They knew their pursuers, a shadowy network orchestrated by the ruthless corporate titan Marcus Thorne, were closing in, their presence a palpable pressure in the vast emptiness. This wasn't merely survival anymore. It was a mission to dismantle a colossal injustice. Their plan hinged on a calculated risk, drawing Thorne's operatives into a remote, inescapable canyon, a natural amphitheater where Ray could control the engagement and Evelyn could broadcast her truth. Luna, sensing the urgency, moved with a newfound intensity, her ears perked, her gait steady and purposeful. She was more than a horse. She was an extension of Ray, a silent partner in their perilous endeavor. The chase began subtly, a game of cat and mouse across the rugged terrain. Ray, with Evelyn clinging low to Luna's back, led their pursuers on a serpentine path, using the sun-drenched mesas and deep ravines to their advantage. Dust plumed behind them, a telltale sign that also served as a distraction, obscuring their precise movements. The drone, a metallic insect of surveillance, buzzed ominously overhead, but Ray anticipated its blind spots, guiding Luna through narrow passages and under rock overhangs where its electronic eyes couldn't penetrate. As they reached the canyon's mouth, the trap was sprung. The pursuing vehicles, a trio of black SUVs, roared into view, their occupants confident they had cornered their prey. But Ray had chosen his ground well. He dismounted Luna, positioning Evelyn behind a cluster of ancient boulders, while he took a stand, rifle in hand, a silhouette against the setting sun. The air crackled with tension, the silence punctuated only by the heavy breathing of men and the distant whir of the drone. Evelyn, with trembling hands but resolute eyes, activated a small, satellite-enabled device, ready to transmit her evidence, a live feed connecting her to a prearranged anonymous network of journalists and legal advocates. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Thorne's lead enforcer, a hulking figure named Kyle, emerged from his vehicle, flanked by armed men. "It's over, Ms. Hart," Kyle's voice boomed, devoid of emotion. "Hand over the drive, and we can make this quick." Evelyn, stepping forward, her face etched with defiance, raised the small device. It's already gone viral, Cale. The truth about Thorne's illegal land grabs, the environmental sabotage, the lives he ruined. It's all out there. A flicker of panic crossed Kyle's face as he lunged. Ray, however, was faster. His rifle cracked, not at Kyle, but at the drone above, sending it spiraling to the ground in a shower of sparks. The diversion was enough. Luna, with an instinctive intelligence, charged past Ray, kicking up dust and disrupting the formation of Cale's men, giving Ray the precious seconds he needed to disarm two of them in a blur of practiced movement. His cowboy skills, honed by years of hardship, were now weapons in a fight for justice. Evelyn, seizing the chaos, finished her transmission, a single defiant press of a button. The digital floodgates opened. The evidence, meticulously gathered, detailing Marcus Thorne's insidious corporate malfeasance, his illicit exploitation of protected lands, and the systemic corruption he fostered, began to spread like wildfire across the global network. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom. Kyle and his remaining men, realizing their mission was compromised and their actions now undeniably public, hesitated, their resolve crumbling under the weight of exposure. Sirens, faint at first, then growing louder, pierced the desert air. Local law enforcement, alerted by Evelyn's preemptive anonymous tip-off, combined with the sudden, widespread dissemination of her explosive data. The Taos community, already abuzz with rumors of the plane crash, now found itself at the epicenter of a monumental scandal. Evelyn's secret, once a burden of fear and isolation, was now a public firestorm, implicating powerful individuals and challenging the very foundations of corporate impunity. The immediate physical threat was neutralized, Thorne's operatives apprehended, but the true battle, the fight for justice and accountability, had only just begun. The desert, silent witness to centuries of human drama, now held the echoes of a truth that could no longer be contained. The echoes of truth reverberated far beyond the Taos desert. In the wake of Evelyn's explosive revelations, Marcus Thorne's empire began to crumble with astonishing speed. The widespread dissemination of her meticulously compiled evidence, detailing illegal land grabs, environmental devastation, and systemic corruption, triggered immediate and aggressive federal investigations. Thorne, once an untouchable titan of industry, found himself facing a barrage of lawsuits, criminal charges, and public condemnation that he could not escape. His carefully constructed facade of respectability shattered, revealing the predatory practices beneath. Justice, slow to arrive, now moved with a relentless fury, dismantling the networks of influence he had so carefully woven. The Taos community, initially a whirlwind of speculation, watched as Thorne's enforcers were apprehended and questioned, their complicity exposed. Local law enforcement, working diligently in conjunction with federal agents, secured the crash site, meticulously collecting further evidence, all of which unequivocally corroborated Evelyn's claims. Evelyn Hart, once a symbol of corporate might, was now universally hailed as a whistleblower, a courageous figure who had risked absolutely everything to expose profound injustice. Her public image, formerly one of detached, ruthless ambition, dramatically transformed into that of a truth-teller, a woman of unwavering principle, willing to sacrifice her personal safety and immense fortune for the greater good. The whispers about the mysterious plane crash and the unlikely rescue coalesced into a powerful narrative of heroism, with Ray at its heart. He was no longer just the enigmatic, homeless cowboy. He was the quiet guardian who had sheltered a vulnerable woman and helped bring a powerful villain to justice. The ancient desert had witnessed a profound battle, and in its stillness, a new kind of peace began to settle over the timeless landscape. Both Ray and Evelyn emerged from their shared ordeal irrevocably changed. Evelyn, stripped bare of her corporate armor, found a profound sense of freedom she had never known. The harrowing wilderness experience, her complete dependence on Ray, and the stark confrontation with her own mortality reshaped her priorities entirely. She immediately began divesting herself from ethically compromised assets, dedicating substantial resources and her formidable intellect to vital environmental conservation and crucial social justice initiatives. These efforts focused particularly on protecting indigenous lands and vulnerable communities, causes that directly aligned with the injustices Thorne had perpetrated. Her immense wealth, once primarily a tool of power, became a formidable force for genuine positive change. Ray, for his part, found a renewed sense of purpose that transcended his previous solitary existence. The Taos community, once viewing him as a peripheral figure, now embraced him with profound respect and admiration. His unique skills, once solely for personal survival, were recognized as invaluable assets to the collective good. He became an unexpected local hero, often consulted on matters of land stewardship, wildlife protection, and animal welfare. His quiet wisdom now sought after. He still cherished his hard-won freedom and the unwavering companionship of Luna, but his profound isolation had softened, replaced by a subtle yet powerful connection to the people and the ancient land he had so fiercely protected. Their paths inevitably diverged. Evelyn returned to a world of boardrooms and global initiatives, albeit with a radically different ethos and a clear moral compass, while Ray remained deeply rooted in the vast expanse of the Taos desert, his spirit intertwined with its ancient rhythms. Yet, the extraordinary bond forged in crisis under the vast, watchful sky of New Mexico remained an unspoken testament to the extraordinary power of unlikely connections. Their story became a powerful reminder that true resilience often emerges from the most unexpected alliances, that truth, even when buried deep beneath layers of deceit, will always find a way to surface, and that the most enduring forms of wealth are not found in fleeting possessions, but in unwavering integrity, profound courage, and the deep human connection shared between two souls from wildly different worlds, united by a common fight for justice. This incredible journey from a desolate plane crash to the dramatic downfall of a corporate titan truly redefined what it means to be a hero. What do you think was the most shocking part of Evelyn's secret? Was it the sheer extent of Thorne's corruption, or Evelyn's incredible courage in standing up to him? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you were deeply moved by Ray and Evelyn's extraordinary journey, and by Luna's unwavering loyalty throughout their ordeal, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more untold stories of resilience, unexpected heroes, and hidden truths that challenge our perceptions. And be sure to check out our next video, where we explore